Welcome to Discograffiti, the music podcast that delivers the objective truth about the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever existed. First things first, you need to know just how seriously we take this shit.
Discograffiti is heavily researched, and the music is always reassessed with fresh ears.
And we're not just covering albums. We do a searingly honest, deep dive analysis of all EPs, singles, comp tracks, relevant solo work and bootlegs, and notable appearances on other artists' records.
And then we give every release an objectively accurate star rating between 0 and 5.
And that allows us all to come face to face with the true shape of an artist's overall arc.
In this episode of Discograffiti, we'll be turning the spray cans on Peter Gabriel.
Prog new wave groundbreaker.
Turned hermetic world music curator guy.
And creepy looking monk dude. And today, by the way, we've got a very special guest here with us in the studio of your mind. One half of an incredibly solid songwriting duo for the band that created the template of fuck you, I ain't quitting my job and I'll make music at my own pace, thank you very much. But still, this pace is real slow even for me, so fuck this, I'm out of here. Please, lads and ladies, no longer tethered to a Lee Mavers-like predilection for unattainable perfection, let's please welcome fellow music obsessive Kevin Whelan.
Hello, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to this in-depth session with Mr. Gabriel.
We are humbled to have you, sir.
So this was kind of a collaborative pick, right? You gave us a few options. This is the one we felt like we could probably do the most justice.
Yes.
So we're psyched. We've gone back and we've checked them all out, and This was an interesting one.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. And I want to ask as well, is he your favorite of all time, or is he buzzing around the hive?
He is, without a doubt, buzzing around the hive, if not the number one. Yeah, I think over the long, yes, I would have to say, pound for pound, I would put him up there.
What was were you a fan of Genesis first, or were you? What was your intro to Peter Gabriel like as a fan?
Definitely, as we get into Melting Face, was the intro, but it would definitely be in a Genesis capacity. It's like I was 10 when his records started coming out, and then I had to kind of go back. But I knew of Genesis, right? I just didn't know of that weird Genesis yet, right? I knew the Abacab kind of Genesis, right?
Yeah, that was me too. I didn't really know. For me, Peter Gabriel kind of arrived fully formed. I wasn't really aware of the prog stuff.
For me, it was Shock the Monkey, MTV, 82.
It had to have been me too.
This is kind of like the same. We did Roxy Music recently. It was the same sort of thing. I really knew him. I was obsessed with MTV when I was little, and
of course.
My brother, who's 8 years, I'm born in 72. My brother's born in 80, so he's maybe around 2 or 3 when Shock the Monkey's on MTV a lot.
Wow,
it scared the shit out of him.
Yeah, that was terrifying.
He would run from the room screaming pretty much every time. It was just the best older brother thing ever.
You're like, watch this.
It would have been the same effect if you saw Genesis live, because I mean, it was a parade of grotesquerie.
He wore the thing, right? He
wore all the things.
Yeah, totally. And the mask, the fox.
But how do you? Yeah. But the fox mask. So how do you deal with sound problems? Because there's no mic inside the mask, right?
Maybe there is.
He talks about that. If you dig into reading, he kind of was messing it up. Because the band was like, no one can hear you when he first put it on, he was improvising. And then no one could hear, or that in the bubble suit. So because then it would make a lot of sound. So he does sort of address it. I think they fixed it with holes and stuff like that. But
should we go through the chronology? Should we go ahead and dive in? Let's start at the beginning.
Yeah. So
you take the lead on this one. I feel
his first ever appearance on a record that was not his own or Genesis's is actually as an accompanying flutist on the song Kathmandu from Cat Stevens' Mona Bone Jacone. So that's a great song. I don't know if you guys are aware of it.
I skipped that one. Sorry.
It's a great song.
I stick to only Peter Gabriel canon, where he's the artist listed on the thing.
And I'm the guy who feels like I'm letting everyone down if I don't listen to his guest starring flute appearance.
Yeah, I take this pretty far, but Dave takes it even farther than that. Anyway,
Go further, yeah.
Yeah.
but that's where it's the first.
And that's
Peter Gabriel
that's
only
1970. That's just a sweet hippie flute thing. And very much like a Love-In kind of a deal, which is definitely a vibe he never picked up on after that. But that doesn't garner a rating. And then we enter, really, with regard to his own music, phase 1, eponymous and ominous, 1975 to 1985.
Nice phase title.
I appreciate it.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yes,
I appreciate
very good.
that very much.
Agreed.
I take great pride in my work. So the very first thing he came out with, it was a very hesitant beginning to his solo career, a cover of Strawberry Fields Forever for the soundtrack for a documentary entitled All This and World War II. The version of the song completely sucks, unfortunately.
It's kind of a pretty straightforward orchestral interpretation of it, which would be fine, but then he kind of sings it in this weird kind of froggy voice,
Like Kermit the Frog. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's weird.
Wow.
You never hear him do that. He has a very distinct kind of gravelly sort of thing to his
Yeah,
voice.
totally unique.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
This doesn't sound like him at all.
This is 1 year before the, I'm in a fucked up car album. So I give this one 1 star. I hate this
I
version.
gave it 2.
2? I can see I'm going to be the brutal one here.
Yeah, maybe not. We don't always agree.
Yeah.
It's better that way.
Did you hear this one, Kevin?
I did not hear that one. I'm sorry. I'm now going to go back and enjoy Froggy.
It's right. You're going to get a lot of other chances to weigh in on Peter.
Yeah, and by the way, you're going to probably want to skip this. All right, so 1977, we're really starting things in earnest. The first of 4 albums called Peter Gabriel, which now in streaming times is now entitled One Period Car. So let's first of all talk about those album titles, okay?
Yeah.
So the first 4 are called Peter Gabriel, and he created a nightmare situation for people who tried to market him, I believe. And it's also the same typeface. And
He said he kind of wanted to do it like a magazine series or something.
Right.
So it's a conscious, he stuck with that artistic choice for a while.
And when was he pushed? At the time, or does that come later?
86.
Yeah, for So they insisted, or maybe it was his. I think it might have been on his end.
No, they were
title.
giving him kind of pressure about it. And he was just seeing the word as a typeface design, like, someone would put like some kind of curly Q or something.
Like the Prince logo or something.
Yeah, exactly. So
anyway, I love this record. This one, I was not really super familiar with the songs that weren't the big hits. Well, some of them I kind of knew before this, but this one was super impressive. I liked it a lot.
what are your thoughts on this one, Kevin?
Yeah, I thought, of course, right, when you go into Salisbury Hill, right, the one that everyone knows,
Right.
Which is in a unique meter, music-wise, right?
Yeah, it's probably the most famous 7/4 song ever, right?
It is. I'm so glad you brought it up because I never even knew it. I went to music school and studied, and someone said it's in 7. Because you listen to the horn part or whatever, the keyboard part, it's amazing.
Yeah, and it's a very natural 7/4.
It's amazing. How do you do that, right? How do you make that? You never know. You always feel it's in 4/4.
Yeah, I never. I never noticed it until I did this and I read it for the purposes of, I was reading. We kind of reading about all these as we were kind of reviewing.
Yeah.
I never really realized it was in 7/4.
Yeah, it's one of those. That's what makes it so unique, and to be such a kind of classic, rock or beginning, new wave rock song.
Yeah, and not only as like a classic rock thing, but then it was like it sort of makes you want to like sign up for Singular Wireless or something. It made it into like commercials. It's this very like a friendly sounding commercial sort of thing, and it's at 7/4. So it's
yeah.
Cool.
And what I loved about this record is. He's already a master, right? He's already kind of created alt rock, these, prog rock kind of craziness, but you really hear him learning and stretching and not really sure. Like he's really far from his groove because he has sort of sometimes some hippie jams, But then he has like Salisbury Hills, which is just like nobody else. It's like, where did that come from? Then you have that Here Comes the Flood version, and it's
which, by the way, I always thought there's nothing wrong with that version. He was apparently at odds with that version and kept redoing it through his career, but I didn't really see any reason why it needed to be recast.
Yeah.
It's good. I know we're going to come up to it on your list, but it's a good version, but I kind of have my favorites. But I think it's
really?
unique. Yeah, I do, right? But it's coming up soon. But I think that's where like the rock part.
Are you referring to Exposure?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that the musicians on this album are really incredible. So Bob Ezrin produced, and the guitar players are Robert Fripp and Steve Hunter. Both of them I just love to death. Steve Hunter, really underrated guitarist. He played on all those great Alice Cooper records, and he played on some great Lou Reed records. He's the guy that's playing all the guitar stuff on Salisbury Hill. Larry Fast plays a lot of the keyboards. You know about Larry Fast at all?
Oh yeah.
Larry Fast is kind of like this sort of synth guru of the time. Made his own records that are kind of like very synth heavy, kind of like Vangelis kind of style records. But he had a big fingerprint on all those early Gabriel records. He's kind of a synth genius. And then Tony Levin and Jerry Marotta. So
amazing,
really stellar.
Rhythm section.
Yeah, great, tasteful players, and really master musicians. And they play really. Some of his later albums get more like they're kind of like constructed in the studio, where they feel like they're kind of made an overdub at a time. But this record really has a feeling like they're a band playing, like these are definitely getting a take, and then
these are definitely songs, which is something he lost sight of 100% as far as I know of it, with regard to the notion of sitting down and writing a song. It's unfortunately not 100% consistent because the first side is pretty near perfect. And in its fumbling towards greatness, the second side sort of loses the plot a little bit. But it's an absolutely amazing record. I give this one 4.5 stars, actually.
I gave it the same 4.5, but I think before we move on, there's a couple other tunes that bear mentioning. Humdrum, one of his best songs ever.
That's
I think.
Probably my favorite song in his entire discography.
I'm almost positive you gave that to me on a mixtape or a mix CD sometime many years ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, we know we're like old best friends for 30 years, so we go way back. But so I'm pretty sure I heard that through you. What are some of your other favorites on the record, Kevin? There's a solid clutch of them we haven't mentioned that are amazing.
I don't know. I think Waiting for the Big One is cool, right? I know we're going to talk, but I even think like the Burgermeister song, just to start.
That's a great song.
Amazing.
Your first solo record, right? It really does bridges who he was and where he wants to go.
It's proggy pop. So it's have
proggy pop. That's it. Yeah. He didn't shy away from it. He's like, I'm going to take you somewhere new, but I'm still that guy.
Yeah, he's a smart businessman.
And you figure because he was so successful, right? I think that's the one thing that, at the time, at least the underground, at least in Europe in particular, right? I mean, he was a godlike kind of dude. And now to go on his own in that way and go right out of the box with that song, I think you got to give him credit, right? He just went for it.
And to not only do that, but to, in a lot of ways, it clarifies a lot of the things that Genesis tried to do and maybe fell short of,
right.
Because it has such a lucid melody line to it. Side one of his debut record, you have prog pop, then the number one with the bullet chart pop of Salisbury Hill. Then you have a Who style song with Modern Love, barbershop harmony with Excuse Me, and then Cosmic Transcendence with Humdrum. I mean, he's all over the map doing everything well. Yeah,
that's just side one.
He's doing everything well.
All right, should we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Kevin, you got a rating for Car?
I would have to say I'm putting it at a 4.
All right.
4?
Okay.
Yep.
Tough critic.
Next one goes under the name, or is there a single? You pilot the ship, Dave. You got the.
Well, it's still Peter Gabriel, but
it's Scratch is next, right?
Scratch.
Okay, I'm not missing a single or something in there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But our version will be called "A Guy Needs a Manicure." All right. So that's 1978. So this is produced by Fripp. And it's you can kind of hear it. I mean, especially with the way that the Frippertronic stuff peaks out on Exposure, which the two of the guys co-wrote.
Well, then there's this album, Exposure, and then Daryl Hall's Sacred Songs.
Yeah.
It feels like another kind of like sister album to these. I think it's a lot of the same people, same kind of time period when Fripp is kind of.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
That's a really cool record if you don't know it.
You'll love it. It's the most batshit crazy thing he's ever done.
Yeah, it's his Robert Fripp record.
Yeah.
But
he was
Scratch-
apparently studying Gurdjieff as well. Like he was doing
Right.
all the batshit crazy spiritual stuff
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sacred Songs.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Yeah.
just
Not just the thing.
So some of the players are back on keyboards in this one. They had Roy Bittan, who's also a really great musician and kind of a favorite of mine.
Because Gabriel was looking for that Springsteen kind of sound.
Yeah,
Wow.
no Steve Hunter on this one, but Sid McGuinness joins the band. But all around, again, amazing players. Kind of in the same. This record, the first two have the same kind of approach. I feel like where they're kind of a band. They're looking to get a good take of something, maybe overdub on that. It's not so much like the built in the studio sort of thing.
Agreed.
What are your thoughts on this, Kevin? What's
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. I think it's progression. You can kind of see him trying to find more of his version of pop, right? Because but I think it's still you hear him saying, "Boy, I kind of can't give up the band rock thing." It's still hard for him to kind of get away from the straight rock format, which is really hard, especially when you have those kind of musicians in a room. You can only imagine what they would sound. They always sound good.
Right.
Anything he brings forward is going to sound amazing just because of the musicians.
Do you feel like it's a progression from the first record? Do you feel like
I think it's a little bit of a wander, but I think it's a progression.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I like this record better than you, Dave.
I really think it's a major regression for him. I think it was a big
Wow.
step back.
Wow.
I think it's diffuse and uninvolving. And frankly, I've been a fan of Gabriel since I was in high school, and I never really connected with this one, and have tried multiple times, and it never really worked.
Now, I got to say, this one for me was entirely brand new. I did not know any of the songs in this one, so I was starting completely from scratch in this one. And I really like about half of it. I would say I really like a lot.
I'll tell you, On the Air, DIY, and Exposure are the only three songs that I think are worthy of our playlist.
I would add Mother of Violence. I quite like that one. It's kind of nice, pretty ballad. And I also like Wonderful Day in a One-Way World. I like that tune. That has a really good hook in it.
And I would even add in Indigo, right? It's sort of unique in its way, right?
Yeah.
But you still what I kind of still marvel at, you can see where he's going more pop now because all the songs are a little shorter, right? He's all kind of in like the 3-minute mark. He's really separating himself from the big, long, right? Except for On the Air.
Yeah.
He's kind of changing in some respects.
DIY, that tune is one where it's an odd time and it's very obvious it's an odd time. That one's giving me I love the song.
That's the best song on the record.
It's a really cool song.
It is.
Thinking of playing it gives me like a panic attack. How many time changes are in it? It seems like it's relentless with the time changes, but it's a really good hook and they play it seamlessly. On the Air, the opener, just fucking epic.
It's excellent.
I love that song.
It is. The first two are they're the two best songs on the record. Besides Exposure, I think. I mean, those two are just great. I wish they were just filled with bangers like that.
Yeah, there's some of the kind of more singer-songwritery ones don't stick the landing quite as much, but I find I liked most of it. I liked most. I give this one 3.5.
I give it 2.
Oh, 2.
Woo!
Yeah, I know. Kevin's gonna bitch slap me half to death.
No. Hard to think of him at 2, but everyone reaches there. I think I'm gonna go with the 3 as well. Right? I think it's out of 5 for sure.
And then we definitely a little tip of the hat to Kevin because in 1979, Exposure by Fripp comes out. So I have given a separate rating to the version on Exposure. I give it a 3-star rating, but I want to hear why you feel like this is the ultimate version and what do you give it?
I think it's also where everyone approaches a song from where they are, how they are, and what happens, right? So, I was such a Gabriel fan, but I couldn't find anything. And someone gave me a tape. It was one of those kind of tape moments, right? Back when tapes had this magic. And they were like, you have to hear this version of Peter Gabriel's. My buddy Neil, who was a huge, he kind of introduced me most to all of Genesis, and a huge, Peter Gabriel fan. And he really helped me in my learning. And I think my love of those, the Frippatronics, the guitar, I think the melodies that he found on that version were so real and authentic. And I must confess, I think I try to copy it with every ballad I've ever done.
Really?
Right? So the new song, yeah. It just, and also, when I hear Radiohead doing it, you're just like, they're just that's who they're going after.
Yeah,
they're going after,
Yeah, I like the Exposure version better too. I think it just has a little bit of extra texture to it. It has a little bit of an extra kind of like psychedelic, like trippy kind of thing to it. I like that record a lot. I do like Exposure in general. So all right, so that's Scratch, right?
Yeah. Well, no, that's Exposure actually.
I forgot we had gone into the Exposure.
But then we go to Melting Face.
Melt, as they call it.
Melt. So Melt is a great album, and it was difficult for him to get it set up. This is the birthplace of the gated drum sound. So if you have any tomatoes to throw, this is the direction in which to throw it.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
It was responsible for...
They invented it by accident. You know that?
Really?
Really? I didn't know any of it.
They had they had like soloed out a bunch of tracks or something, and they had some gates on some of the drum mics. They had gates, I think, on the overheads or something.
Yeah.
They had muted a bunch of other stuff by accident, and then they heard they weren't even intended to listen that way, but I think it was Phil Collins was sitting at the drum kit playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
Phil's the drummer.
they had just the overheads on, and it made that crazy gate effect because of the way they had the gates set. And they're like, wait a minute, that sounds incredible. So then they kind of went from it being kind of a mistake to really refining it and like perfecting it.
In fact, it's not even this record where it's the first time it's done. It's Intruder. So if you want to
right.
hear
Well, that's a song I think they were working on.
If you want to hear the origin of the gated drum sound, it is that song.
Wow.
So there's a lot of shittiness to be attributed, but the origin is kind of exciting. They had these creative limits on the drums. Not just that, but there's no cymbals on this record at all.
Wow.
That was another. He didn't want any cymbals on the record.
This record, I have to say, I listened to this one twice because just for this show, because I felt like there was so much information in it and so much, and it felt kind of like it required more than kind of one listen to sort of get it. And I think I was right because on second listen, I feel like it kind of clicked with me. This one, they make the transition to where they're it feels more like they're building tracks kind of in the studio. It's less like live band take kind of scenario. But some really cool, vibey, dark, interesting soundscapes and stuff on this record.
I think there's not a single song that's on this that's not a classic. But I've lived with this record for decades, and every time I've heard it, it's been enough to blow me away. But did not know until this trawl for Discography that he had such a hard time setting it up. Ahmet Ertegun was on his jock about he said,
oh, really?
What do people in America care about this guy in South Africa, referring to Biko. And
wow.
he heard Lead a Normal Life, and his first question was, has Peter been in a mental hospital? Like he just didn't he didn't get it. Like for whatever reason it completely missed its mark.
It's a pretty artsy record. It's pretty much like, there are a couple of songs that have kind of stuck on. I mean, the only songs like this again was mostly new to me. I knew Games with Frontiers and Biko. But otherwise, I mean, I guess I maybe
Not One of Us is incredible. Start, I Don't Remember, and Through the Wire. Everything, everywhere you look on this record, it's just pure, unadulterated.
I could see why like a record company suit would be like out on here thing. This sounds like uncommercial. It kind of is. It's pretty uncompromising. It's very artsy. It's art rock.
Yeah,
this is art rock.
It's I think it's probably the main reason why I put him forward as the request for this conversation, right?
Is for this record.
Yeah, I think this record literally rips the stars out of the skies.
All right. Talk to us. Just tell us. Tell us your history with the record.
I mean, it's an utter obsession, love affair. Changed my life. From the moment I looked at the cover, I had no idea, right, what it was and how cool it was.
So this is where you come in.
Yeah, this is sort of like. I would say that this is where I decided that music is what I kind of had to do. And I think to this day, aspire. I mean, when you put on that no self-control and with his weird yelping and then the way the notes come in and the guitars and it's almost like it's Beethoven-like. So yeah, I would have to say that I would put this up on the Mount Rushmore of
I remember as a kid, like I had good urges musically, and I had some wayward.
We're all roughly the same age, right? So
yeah.
Me and Dave were born in '72.
But I remember being 10 or so and seeing the video for Games Without Frontiers and thinking, that it had a very strong pop sensibility. So both sides of me, the cool kid who discovered Velvet Underground early, and the not very cool kid who went to see Bryan Adams as his first show. Both those idiots were satisfied.
Well, Games Without Frontiers is such a great crossover new wave. He makes sense
totally.
in the space of new wave. He'd been like prog guy just a few years before. That seems like to me that's where the crossover is kind of starting to happen.
I think you're right. Yeah. I think that is where the crossover. Yeah.
This album I give an unquestionable 5 stars.
I gave this one 4, and if I listened to it again, I think with each listen to it, I would probably add a half star because I do think there's like
don't feel pressure.
No, I gave it a 4, but I could probably be talked into if we did this again in like 3 or 4 days and listen again, I'd probably give it another half stars. I do feel like it's a grower of an album.
Yes,
it's a lot of information to take in at once, especially doing this where we're listening to them all right back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
A couple other things about this one. Steve Lillywhite produced, so he's kind of got the big name fancy producer in the chair, and he did a lot of he was kind of like the go-to new wave guy. He did Susie and the Banshees and like XTC. He did the first 3 U2 records.
I know he did the Pogues,
Psychedelic
Furs.
Fall
from Grace with God.
Yeah, so this is
the Pogues.
So this is kind of they've managed to kind of make Peter Gabriel sort of hip. He sort of fit in with new wave. And he fit in with MTV and where that was all going.
Yeah.
So the next records where he really makes the MTV breakthrough.
Yeah.
But he also kind of the visual part of it was always a natural thing for him. So he was kind of a natural.
That's true. That's I think it's a great insight.
Yeah,
you're right.
True.
How that was kind of crafted. You're exactly right because he really shouldn't have been in that new wave sort of ilk. Right, but they kind of you're right. I never thought about that.
He got swept forward for some pretty solid reasons, I think, for suits in boardrooms. So we can agree that one worked out really well for him. Then,
Kevin, are you giving that one 5 stars? I would assume
5, or 50 million.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
So you're the very first songs you ever wrote. Was that born entirely from this sort of?
Yes, without a doubt. And tomorrow, whatever I try. It
always comes from this. What's interesting is that it's not a concept album, but because there's something that really threads the needle of a sound that goes together and subject matter that goes together. It feels unintentionally like a dystopian concept record.
Yeah, I totally agree.
About God knows what. Okay, moving on. 1982, we have record number 4, also called Peter Gabriel, but better known by Security. This feels a certain kinship with everything that came after for the rest of his career. This sort of float. He wrote a song, but then he wants to let it drift and float along. Before I say anything else, I want to know how Kevin feels about it. What do you think about this record?
Yeah, I think you kind of gave the good header, and how did he do that, right? How did he go from that second record, like you said, where he's wandering or a backstep to something so unique, melting face, and now to go where he landed, right? I think you're right. This is where I think this record is a masterpiece as well. And I think it's dark and it's long. You see, when you look at the songs are back up to 5, 6, longer, right?
Yeah, he's
back
starting
into
to let,
that
the thing that I think affects him from here forward is bloat.
Well, he gets sort of into, I think, even more so than just the. On the one hand, they're doing the approach where they're creating stuff in the studio, they're building the tracks, but I think he's kind of thinking of it more in terms of like soundtrack type. You can see the sort of approach that he takes to his soundtrack music. You can see the seeds of it here, and you can see why he kind of was able to do that successfully. I don't know. To me, this record, this is where he starts really heavily using the Fairlight and gets into sampling. Yeah. He actually had the first Fairlight in the UK. Did he? Yeah. So this is sort of some of the earliest. He was like owner number one of one in the UK. So this is sort of some of the earliest Fairlight noodlings. And some of it's pretty cool. Like a lot of Shock the Monkey is done on Fairlight, and especially like what's the song? San Jacinto. That opening like little marimba lick on there. It's kind of like, that's a good example of what the Fairlight was like. So it's a sample of a marimba, but it's a very lo-fi, early, grainy kind of sample. So it has this kind of like, it doesn't really sound like very much like the original thing that was sampled. It's not a perfect copy. So it has this kind of uncanny valley kind of like to me, it's kind of like psychedelic sounding, kind of like otherworldly sounding quality to it, just because of the early nature of sampling and the kind of graininess of the samples. So that is used heavily. That it's kind of like that. He got the new toy and went berserk with the Fairlight on this record.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of the same players, but you kind of can't really always tell that they're there. It's sort of like it's almost kind of like a record you'd make in like Logic or something. Now it has a very MIDI quantized. Kind of ahead of its time, really.
Look, out of the 8 songs on the record, there's only 2 that I would really recommend. That would be Shock the Monkey and Wallflower. I'd never really, even...
like San Jacinto? That sounds pretty cool.
I'm not a huge fan. Rhythm of the Heat, not a huge fan. I would give it 2.5 stars.
I love it. This is like high stakes gambling. Okay.
I like this one a little bit better than you. I gave this one 3. And this one was hard because I feel like this is a highs and lows kind of record for me. There's probably like half of it that I found that I liked quite a lot. I've had this one on vinyl for many years. This one I was already pretty familiar with. So
because it has a lot of his staples, right? I have a touch, lay your hands on me, and
What do you give it, Kevin?
Wallflower.
Yeah, I would have to say that as much as I love it, it's sort of like a fandom thing. I would be in the same vein of saying 3.5.
3.5.
Right.
Yeah, because my big question is, he's almost, and I love him, but he's almost lucky he had Shock the Monkey. Because it's one of those records that if he didn't have Shock the Monkey on this, it could have been a tanker.
Yeah,
he would have gotten all the credit.
Well,
right?
This one in particular, they almost didn't put out. So this one was even more of a commercial.
Oh, really?
This one really almost didn't come out. The label hated this one. And Shock the Monkey, we're very familiar with it now. It seems like a perfectly reasonable hit song, but it's a pretty weird song to be like a hit.
It's
completely insane. It's more It's more like a Melting Face record. It's not like a chord. Yeah. All the other ones on here are sort of chord songwriters.
Somehow he saw a window cracked open. He saw that it was around this time that it was possible, if he really fucking set his mind to it, to become massively famous. And I think he intentionally made that decision. For the next couple of years, he's kind of quiet. In 82,
they did a big tour. They toured for this record because they had the hit on it.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe a part of the reason why it took him a while to make another record. But yeah, he had been making them very regularly and then takes up kind of a long break.
Then a long break. So in 82, the only peep we hear from him is the song Across the River from the Music and Rhythm compilation. That's an interesting one because it's a little peek into the future of how Gabriel wound up sounding in around 92. This one I would give 4 stars, and for a fan is definitely like a must hear.
What was this from? This was from
It's from
soundtrack?
a compilation.
A compilation.
Called Music and Rhythm.
Yeah.
Very obscure one.
It's pretty interesting. I gave it 3. I didn't like it as much as you did.
Yeah.
But it's Stuart Copeland plays in this. You know that?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It does not sound like Stuart Copeland.
You know what Stuart Copeland eventually did play on? This may have been an audition for that.
What was it?
So,
Oh yeah, we're getting to it.
Yeah, you know, right?
Yes, I do. I know that. It's in my notes too.
Okay, then we'll get to it when we get to it then. All right, in 1983, Plays Live comes out. We do not cover live albums unless they really unless they're really a part of the narrative. Kevin, if you have anything specific to say about it.
No, I'm kind of with you. I would skip it too. I was like, it's whatever. It's a live record.
He also, Peter Gabriel, admitted to going back and tinkering with it after it was recorded. So
no kidding. That's
what
funny.
a fucking piece of shit.
So it says it in the liner notes.
Let's change all the ratings.
He admits it in the liner notes, which is kind of upstanding thing.
Kevin, I apologize. This is live. We're going to have to go back to the beginning and start all over again. Sorry, bro. All right. So then 1984, he's tinkering in the workshop, in the laboratory, as it were. So only lets 3 things come out. One is Walk Through the Fire on the Against All Odds soundtrack, again with his boy Phil Collins.
That one's kind of one of the better soundtracky things, I thought.
I give it 3 stars. I give that song
the same.
You got a rating for that?
I would give it 3. I agree.
I find it still weird to rate individual songs.
I know,
but I do.
But you'll get over that feeling of weirdness.
So far, no. We've done kind of a lot
in
of
a few years. Okay, then Out from Gremlins. Great movie. Do we like the song? I got not very much to say about this track. I give it 2.5 stars.
I give this one 1. I wasn't feeling this one. This sounds like they just kind of threw it together in a few hours.
Don't know it.
Yeah, it's weird. It's in a weird scene in Gremlins where it's like like some like crazy mayhem is happening.
Did you go back and rewatch the movie?
No, I read about it.
I love having that much commitment.
Yeah,
to Peter Gabriel.
I feel like the only way I could really rate this song was if I watched the entirety of
every
Gremlins.
movie he ever worked on. What do you give it?
I gave it 1. I didn't like it.
Kevin, did you give it something poorly?
I have to give it a listen. I don't know it.
Yeah, stumping. That's
I'm
a pretty
go out on this one.
That's as deep cut as you can get, I think. His Gremlins jam.
It's true. But however, that being said, the missive that Peter Gabriel whipped up to alert the media that he was leaving Genesis is called Out, Angels Out. So maybe it's from that. Moving right along, 1984, the last thing he did was on Laurie Anderson's album Mr. Heartbreak. He appeared on 3 tracks, Gravity's Angel, Language d'Amour, and Excellent Birds. I give that 2.5.
NA for me, non-canon.
I give it stars just because I feel like compulsively I have to. Or else I'd wake up in the middle of the night. I already wake up in the middle of the night. Do you give it anything or no? All right, never mind. 1985, moving right along here. We have a couple appearances on some random records and a soundtrack. So he's still tinkering in the laboratory. From the song Take Me Home, from No Jacket Required by Phil Collins. The song Take Me Home, huge hit. I love that song. You can't really hear Peter Gabriel. I give that one 5 stars. Love that song. Unironically.
I don't know how to rate that.
You don't have to.
I don't know how to rate that in terms of Peter.
I didn't know. It was a huge song. That's
a huge song, yeah.
In terms of like how to rate it as a Peter Gabriel song when you can't really
hear
him on
to.
it.
Yeah, you can't hear him. Just as a song.
As a song, it's all right. 3.
As a song, it's fuck you. All right. 1985 also brings No More Apartheid from the Sun City LP. Gross.
Well, that one, that record was hastily thrown together. They had the kind of "We Are the World"ish kind of song, the "I Ain't Gonna Play Sun City" song, and then they needed a whole record. So it was.
This is filler.
This feels like filler. It's 7 minutes or something long.
Yeah,
it's
I get 1.5. No thanks.
Next.
Okay, Birdie.
Right. Okay. So this is a whole other topic. So he did a lot of these scores, which seem like kind of
not as much scores. He did more soundtrack contributions.
Soundtrack contributions, right?
This is a real score.
Right. Birdie is one of the ones.
I've seen the film, and the film is a great film.
That's in my notes. I was going to ask if either of you guys had seen the film.
Have you seen it, Kevin?
I have and love it. I think it's a magical movie.
It's as gentle as the soundtrack.
I read the description of it and it seemed like I would like it, which is
Alan Parker in the 80s was pretty much infallible.
Yeah, I'd probably like it. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
I have not seen it.
Oh, it's really enjoyable, and that will make you like the soundtrack more.
Yeah, and the song "Under Lock and Key," which is derived from "Wallflower," is even better than "Wallflower." I think this I give 3 stars. I actually have had this for quite some time.
Agreed.
Yeah, I also gave it 3. These are kind of it's hard to make apples and apples comparisons with the soundtrack albums. Mm-hmm. A lot of the same players, Larry Fast and Tony Levin, and his guitarist David Rhodes. John Hassel plays on it a little bit, who's another amazing musician. There were a couple of things on this that I think I probably would put on like our playlist for this show.
Yeah, yep. There's literally 2 things.
Quiet and Alone. That seemed like very aptly titled.
I love when that happens.
And so, this one was one of the more enjoyable ones for me out of his soundtrack stuff.
The most enjoyable, I think.
Yeah, I would say the same. Yeah, this one's probably the most listenable, like as a record.
It's of a piece.
Yeah, when you're scoring a movie, it's like you have a job to do, and you gotta, it's not like when you're making a record where there's no limits on what you can do. It's kind of by nature you have to kind of match picture and stuff. So. A little hard to compare apples to apples, but this one I found pretty listenable.
Do you have extensive experience with this record, Kevin, or is this kind of here and there you listen to it?
Here and there, right? But liked it. Yep.
All right. So in '86, at first he kicks off the year by doing background vocals on the Calls song "Everywhere I Go," but come on. We don't go to 1986 to talk about him doing background vocals. Phase 2, music for people who love compact discs. That's from 1986 to the present. We kick off the compact disc phase with So. Kevin, take it away, my friend.
Boy, away. How do you kind of, I think this is again where and in a career that moved the world many times, he sort of just did it again. It was one of those things that was so unique and so out there and so oddly like in sync with what the market wanted, right? Which is weird because there's a lot of big songs again in that and sort of heartfelt and weird, but he had the movies kind of came in with him. It's sort of like his entire career built up to 1986.
It made sense at the time, but honestly, looking back at it, I have to say, looking back at all those people, Sting, Springsteen, Prince, the big stars of that time, what the fuck was Peter Gabriel doing there? It was a strange one. I didn't think twice about it at the time, but in retrospect, it was.
Yeah, and this is sort of like a kind of style of songwriting that seems sort of new, like this sort of sophisticated pop song thing, but very much pop song. Even the kind of like half of this record was like smash hit level of.
Oh yeah,
like at least five of these songs are like very famous.
Yeah, massive.
And you wouldn't have really gotten the inkling that he was. Look at what the last record was before this. The record with Shock the Monkey on. Which one is that? Security.
Yeah, Security in '82. I mean, you didn't.
It wasn't really a hint
coming.
that this was gonna.
No.
But
what wound up happening was after Birdie, Lanois, who had produced that, was invited back to Gabriel's home to work on the next solo project. So it was the 2 of them and David Rhodes on guitar. It eventually grew to include all these percussionists, but that was the main unit. He had Stuart Copeland, as it sounds like everybody here knows, just to kick the record off with some cymbal work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like collecting people and like little sound moments. I know in the later records, he had fucking Peter Green in there. I mean, that guy's a legend.
Wow.
You would never know it.
Yeah.
Unless you were told it, you would never know it.
Well, it kicks off like really. Red Rain.
Red Rain is excellent.
It's a great opener.
Yeah.
It's a great hook. I love a song that can get away with like starting with a hook like that. Like it just crashes in with that chorus.
You know what another cool thing about that song is too, is that it's just like Moribund the Burgermeister. It appeals to the prog people because of the dystopian stuff.
That's so funny. I was
and
just
to the
going
big
to ask.
crowd.
Yeah. I would because you said that it was sophisticated, right? But when you look at it, it kind of is like that first album all over again.
Yeah.
But in a much more
look, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, and how we got to writing those kind of songs, and especially because we've always been touring around with like pop, rock, folky songs, but this doesn't have that, right? So the Red Rain and all of them, right? So how do you write that song? I think that's where it's not the unique, chorus verse. I mean, it is, but in that unique way that's so big and rambling in a way.
Yeah,
but succinct.
Sometimes you just, seems like the kind of record where he went in with this such a strong core of material that it's not overstuffed. It's got 9 songs. It doesn't really feel the need to overstay. It makes its point. And it's pretty concise and like very user friendly.
Yeah, which wow, is that not the case in the future?
He sort of started to get away from that.
Totally got it. Like not only got away from it, but went all in the opposite direction.
This record's pretty tight. I mean, there's a couple things on it that are. There's maybe 1 or 2 things that are a little bit. Like,
I'm not into
filler.
Mercy Street. And Don't Give Up, I could do without. Honestly.
Oh, I love Don't Give Up.
You do?
I mean, when the Kate Bush voice comes in, it's like
who was supposed to be in that?
I read it. Who was it again? It was
Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton. That would have been really weird.
That would have.
Was it really?
Yeah,
wow.
It's impossible to imagine anybody but Kate Bush singing it. It seems like it was just meant for her.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on the Don't Give Up. At first, I was like, oh, I kind of hate it because I was always 50-50 on Kate Bush. I know it was like one of those things like you had to love her.
I'm still trying, but I
think we'll probably eventually do her for this show, and we'll give it the full.
Yeah, I don't
immersion.
understand yet. I don't really.
I don't. Unfortunately, I try, and I'm told that I should. There's a couple artists like her, Joni Mitchell. Like I'm told I have to. I'm like, oh, I just can't.
I can't really do. I can't do Tom Waits.
Yeah,
I can't get with Tom Waits.
I love it
so many times.
Where did you try with Joni though? Where'd you dive in?
I've just went back actually because you guys have. I'm sorry, but this has been the most enjoyable thing I've done. Like I actually went and studied it. Now I was like, well, I want to do this for a couple other artists.
Awesome.
I just recently gone back with her, and I was like, oh shoot, some of it's really not bad. But I'm like, I was like, oh shit, I can't now change my mind. But
sure you can.
But I do think
that's one of the great things about doing this show is it's like that constantly for me, going through this stuff. There's always stuff I'm discovering that's kind of way better than I thought or that I would have missed because the way we do this, we're kind of like we make a pledge to listen to every single thing.
Everything.
So there's a lot of records.
Even if we know
you
got to get context.
Right. There's a lot of records where I wouldn't have really given a chance where I've discovered stuff that I liked. Just in the however many.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's. You guys you're retraining me, right? I think we can't also forget what that video did at the time. And
the videos
just stopped the world.
Yeah, the videos were really a major component of his success. I personally feel like Sledgehammer was the good hit, Big Time was the bad hit.
Yeah, amen.
I like Big Time too, though.
You did?
I mean, the Big Time, the actual like melody and like it's like the post chorus melody, the way the song kind of ends, and the way it kind of like wraps up at the end. It kind of does a little C section at the end. I really like it melodically. The production I don't really like as much on that. The production's kind of like a little bit like. I don't know. It reminds me of like All She Wants to Do Is Dance or something. It has this sort of like clanging sort of.
It just
production.
feels so crass and 80s like.
But I do like.
I know it makes fun of that kind of thing, but in the end, it's doing what it purports to hate in more, in more massive volume than anyone else was doing.
I have a soft spot for it. I kind of like it, but I could see why. I do see your point.
It's still going on the playlist, but I don't like that one.
Yeah, Sledgehammer went to number 1. It was number 1 single for 4 weeks. It was a smash.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was a number 1 single.
Look, I remember at the time, it's actually better than I remembered it, because after a while, after I initially played it to death and then condemned it in my mind for a long time as kind of a cloying attempt to be successful. But listening to it now, it's the first time in a long time. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I always like this record. I mean, I might be kind of a basic bitch for having this be one of my favorites, but the songs are very, very good. He had really strong material, but probably the best like core group of songs just as like a songwriter that he ever had.
Yes,
this is, I explained to Joe the other day what my theory about this kind of thing is. I think he realized something along the lines of, okay, I'm kind of weird. I'm kind of not rich yet. And I kind of have to figure out what I'm going to do if I want to make a windfall. So, okay, how do I, took a class on how to make a rock record that'll pay in perpetuity or something.
Yeah, although I guess Sledgehammer, though, was kind of an afterthought on the record.
Yeah.
It was added at the last minute.
They were packing up to go home.
Yeah, it was not going to be on the record. It was the last thing they did. So,
oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
But this one I give 3.5 stars.
I give it 4, and I could go higher than that probably, but it's an easy. I was either going to be 4 or 4.5.
What about you, Kevin?
I unfortunately will have to go 5. I think it's hard not to have what you said, where it's just, I'm so tired of it. But I think it's Joe's point where, when you come off of Security, when the songs were just sort of, and now look at this group of songs, right? Red Rain, Don't Give Up, In Your Eyes, Big Time, Sledgehammer. I mean, they're all so strong to have that many strong songs.
Absolutely.
It's unique.
Absolutely. And this is really the only time where that kind of crazy balls to the wall production matches the song quality.
Yes, agreed.
So,
and it is, there are some 80s kind of sounding things on it, but Lanois is pretty tasteful, and it doesn't veer into overdone.
What did you give it?
I give it 4.
4. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 1989, Passion. Last Temptation soundtrack. All right. So this was originally composed as the soundtrack to Last Temptation of Christ, but after the movie came out, he kept developing the music, and finally released it as like a standalone project called Passion. And this was a landmark for world music, quote unquote.
They call this world ambient.
Right. And this won a Grammy for Best New Age Album. So I feel like a New Age influence starts to creep into his work that really basically means that he lost the ability to edit things.
Well, this one, I don't think, not yet on this really.
Right.
This one I think kind of succeeds for what it is.
Right.
And it's sort of, this is, this one I did not enjoy as much as Birdie. And it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird to think about people listening to soundtrack stuff in general, but people do, like for entertainment, I never really quite got that.
But this was a big record.
This was a big deal. Yeah. And it was, I think it was pretty, it was influential too. In like film score world. A lot of cool sounds on it.
If you like dusty flutes.
A lot of dusty flutes, a lot of
that's my porn name, by the way.
Lots of guys, lots of cool sounds on this, and what about the movies? The movie any good? I never saw it.
Yeah,
it's good. All right.
Yeah, I would have to say, I went to Catholic school in Ocean City, New Jersey, St. Augustine's, and I remember the controversy where my parents were appalled, and how dare we watch anything like this, and how could we do something so bad. And of course, then Peter Gabriel made the music, and I was like, oh boy, I gotta watch it. And I watched it. I thought the movie was incredible, and I thought the music kind of complemented it so well. And I am one of those nerds that listen to this ad nauseum. And I don't know if it's because it was my late 80s, like I was so brainwashed by the late 80s, just on late 80s music, because I was such an 80s kid. I was like, oh, this is good. But the new agey stuff even got to me. I was like, oh, I don't want to go to an ashram kind of thing. But it had that, But anyway, I thought it was, it was again the cool sounds. And
What do you give it?
I'm going to give it 4 stars.
Yeah, I give it 3.5. I rather like it.
I give it 3, which is the same I give Birdie, but it's
Yeah.
hard to, like I said, it's kind of hard to see it as an apples and apples thing with the actual
it's true.
records. You know,
It's
it
true.
seems hard to rate. Kind of.
It's much more of a mood than it is a piece of music.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
in
But I respect it. It's well done.
in 89. Oh wait, what do you rate it, Kevin?
He said 4.
Oh, you did.
I
say
gave it 4.
Okay, sorry.
Yep.
I refuse to accept that. I'm going to keep asking until I get the right number. All right, so
Like a cop.
yeah, I have 1989, "Shaking the Tree" with Youssou N'Dour on the Lion. A different version with Peter's lead vocals appears on Gabriel's 1990 compilation "Shaking the Tree," along with a 1990 re-recording of "Here Comes the Flood." So we're retooling things. Whoever's interested in that kind of thing. Okay, so that I give that 3.5 stars. "Shaking the Tree."
Yeah, I give that 3.
All right, 1992, Us. Okay, so Us focused on more personal themes than So.
Again, a long gap, 6 years between
6
kind of
years.
proper albums.
I am just going to tell you that the only song I really care about is the first one, "Come Talk to Me," the one with Sinead O'Connor. Given its bloated length of 7 minutes, it's surprisingly good. Otherwise, these are very long songs that drone on and on with no dynamics at all whatsoever. He sounds like Sting half the time, and that mid-tempo, mid-range thing, it just is like a digitized float. That's what it sounds like.
Well, this is another one I think I liked more than you did.
I give it 1 star.
It's better than that. It's not a 1-star record.
No, you're right. It's a half-star record. I'm being generous.
Well, the singles are good. I like Digging in the Dirt a lot.
I like the B-side of that.
Yeah, I like Digging in There, and Steam is pretty cool. Steam is very obviously some A&R guy said we need another Sledgehammer.
Totally.
Yeah, it's Sledgehammer light. It's just not as good as Sledgehammer.
I kind of found it to be kind of I'm like, I remember this jam. This ain't bad. I like that song. All right.
Kevin has already decided to never be friends with me.
The video for Steam.
I will tell you, not to cause controversy, but I think Steam, along with the video and sort of like the attempt to do the sexual references like said Sledgehammer was like, oh no, don't do it again.
The video is pretty cringy. It's he comes out
really
like a
massive because now he's looking like someone's like grandfather cringy and it's like, oh no, these girls don't like you in the video.
Yeah, right. The video is not great. The song is I don't mind. It's okay. Look, he's very obviously doing a Potboiler remake of Sledgehammer.
Totally.
You got to kind of accept that. Take that as But Digging in the Dirt's a cool song. You don't like Digging in the Dirt?
Not really. No, I don't.
That's another one. I like it as a composition. It has like the chorus kind of pops and like the groove is kind of satisfying, and then there's kind of like a B section, like a post chorus section that's kind of moody and like that song I always did like. That was another kind of big hit for him. Kind of his last real like.
You know what the hallmark to this album is? It's compulsively meandering.
Yeah, I mean, well, every song is like 6-7 minutes.
Yeah,
I liked kind of like a third of it. I would say. I also like the song "Blood of Eden" pretty good. That's another like.
Yeah, see, I think I would. Again, I think I was still kind of in that Peter Gabriel haze of love, where you kind of can't go. And I do agree with the whole Sting influence, where it was really kind of like that late '80s, early '90s kind of drive sobs. It was very very Connecticut. Everyone loves that kind of, it was at the time where everyone put it in, it sounded good. But that Come Talk to Me is a great song. The Washing of the Water, to this day, I sing that like, will the river carry me home? I'm always trying to rip that off because it's like a gospel thing.
Yeah.
Kiss the Frog, Kiss That Frog. That I think you should take all of the stars away for that song. But I think it's really mixed. It's a mixed record.
Yeah. What do you give it?
I'm going to give it a 2.
Oh, really? I figured from what you're describing that you had more of a.
I liked it the best of everyone. I gave it 2.5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
There you go.
All right. So everyone agrees, though, it's
a step down.
Yeah.
And then, okay, are we
all right, I'm going to just touch on this super quick and almost use an auctioneer's type of quick voice.
Yeah, well, we'll explain what's about to happen.
Yeah, so from 94 to 2008, he was, I think, able to sustain this sort of Charles Bissell level of creativity with just. And by the way, when he would release an album, it being so uncommercial, he had to get by doing soundtrack work. So from 1994 to
I don't think he probably had to get by. He probably had way more than enough money he would ever need.
Probably. But this is his way to, I guess, keep his toe in the pool water.
Point is, there's a lot of these where he did like one-offs for. I spent an entire afternoon going through these.
This is Peter Gabriel's bill-paying soundtrack work from 1994 to 2008, so he could release records that almost nobody but him could possibly.
Why don't
care
we,
about.
instead of going through every single one, why don't you cherry pick some of the gems, or unless you want to just kind of rapid fire go through the whole list?
I
know you're a completist. You're a completist.
Yeah.
All right.
1994 Lovetown from Philadelphia, 1994 Taboo from Natural Born Killers.
Both kind of okay.
1994 Summertime from Gershwin.
Now that one, let's stop on that one.
That's
that one
good.
is good.
It's better than it seems like it should be.
Do you know about that? Do you know about that album much? So it's from a Gershwin compilation album that's kind of an interest. First of all, this is the first song and the best song on the album. There's a bunch of other artists on it, kind of big, like Suzanne Vega, I think, is on it. Other kind of artists of that kind of caliber at the time.
So you wanted me to just dart through these?
Well, this one's the interesting one. That's why I wanted to cherry pick the interesting ones. So the guy that played, there's this harmonica player, it's like a virtuoso harmonica guy named Larry Adler, who was friends with the Gershwin brothers and like played on like American in Paris or Rhapsody in Blue, whatever had harmonica on it. He was like their guy. So he's in his 80s when they made this album. So when you hear the guy playing harmonica on his version of Summertime, it's that guy, Larry Adler. It's kind of like really his record. And he kind of plays harmonica throughout. He's actually pretty amazing. He's actually like,
that's cool.
Yeah. So, and Summertime's the first song on the record, and it's really good. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it's
so
that's
my take on it.
Yeah, that'll definitely be on the playlist. 1995 Party Man from Virtuosity. 1995 While the Earth Sleeps from Strange Days. 1995 from the Leonard Cohen compilation Tower of Song, Suzanne.
Okay, that's the one
Man,
we should
is
talk
that
about
shitty.
for a second.
Ooh, it's bad.
Do you know that one, Kevin?
I haven't heard it. I mean, I know the song.
It's kind of like the Buddha Bar Volume 12 Chill Out mix of Suzanne. And then, okay, In the Sun is next, right?
In the Sun from Diana.
Do you know what that
Princess
song
of
is?
Wales? No.
All right, so the original of In the Sun is a really beautiful song. It's a song by Joseph Arthur. You familiar with his records at all?
No.
Joseph Arthur is like a songwriter who made one record that I really love, which I forget what it's called, but that is the kind of lead single off it. The Joseph Arthur's version is really beautiful. And the Peter Gabriel version is kind of a stripped down take on that. It's kind of not really as good. You kind of miss out on a lot of the harmony of the song. In Peter Gabriel's version, it's Joseph Arthur turned out to be kind of a kook. He's like a big anti-vax guy. He writes he's like a Van Morrison. He writes like anti-vax songs. Anyway, I recommend finding the original Joseph Arthur version. It's a really good song.
1998, I Grieve from City of Angels, which he would later re-record even shittier for Up.
I wanted to ask, did he know that? Oh wow, okay, thank you. It is the same song.
Yeah. But it was originally in this movie. So That'll Do from Babe, Pig in the City.
So there's a whole category of these kind of like Oscar bait kind of songs.
Yeah, this was written by Randy Newman.
Yeah, so and there's a few of these where he got nominated for Oscars, and this was one.
But even more importantly, 1999 he does Carpet Crawlers 99, and here's why this is cool. So Kevin, are you retrospectively a Peter Gabriel Genesis fan?
No.
Okay, so you don't like them.
You never got into like Lamb Lies Down or any of that.
That song just blows your mind.
But if you are a Genesis fan, this is the very last thing that they'll all probably ever do together. This is the five-man lineup of a very underrated song from Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Yeah. It's a great song. It's also the last studio recording by any configuration of Genesis.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Gabriel and Colin share lead vocals, and they were actually going to get Ray Wilson, who was the final singer. After
he's like the post Phil Collins singer.
He's the Gary Sharon of Genesis. I mean that from a Van Halen 3 perspective. But the plan was dropped when it turned out that they sucked. And the final verse was left out. Anyway, I give that 5 stars. I love that version.
Yeah, it's good.
Wow,
I gave it
love
4.
I will have to go listen.
It's awesome.
Like I was saying, I am a total Genesis fan. Maybe a little bit more of a Collins Genesis fan, just because of my work.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing Genesis on the show.
Can't wait.
Because,
I'm a huge fan.
Dave's a huge fan, and I'm kind of like
huge.
I'm a little bit of a novice.
And I like both. And look, we're around the same age. I'm 49. I no longer have guilty pleasures. They're simply pleasures. And even though we talk about music, there's still
it's all pleasure. Right.
Yeah. Are you 50 on the nose or?
I'm 52 on the nose. Almost just turned. Yeah.
Right.
Good for you, brother. You still in Jersey or what?
Listen. You never leave. Never leave. You won't let me leave.
I know, I get it. My parents are trying to drive me back. All right, so in the year 2000,
there's more lightning round still.
Yeah, OVO, music from the Millennium
no. Okay, that's
show.
an actual thing.
It's still a Lightning Dome thing, I think.
All right. Do you know what that is?
I give it 1 star, so I'd like to consider it lightning round material.
Well, it's kind of we should talk about it a little bit because it was kind of a major project for him. You know about that project? Neither of you guys know about the Millennium Dome?
I'm just going to stay quiet in hopes that you'll pass on to the next topic.
Well, what this was for was there was like a Cirque du Soleil style show at a building that is now known as the O2 Arena, but it was called the Millennium Dome when they opened it. At the Millennium, and the building itself was kind of this weird like white elephant. Like it was built for this big Millennium celebration, and it cost like the taxpayers all sorts of money. And it was like it's a heinously ugly, awful looking building, and there was this like World's Fair kind of expo thing at it. And the centerpiece of this World's Fair type thing was OVO, which is this album basically that Peter Gabriel wrote for this. It's not very good. There's kind of like the main song. It's the theme of it is like a rap kind of thing.
Wait, do you like it, Kevin? Have you heard it?
No,
it's pretty obscure.
It's very obscure.
I had no idea it existed until we did this. I had never heard of it. But
he's even Liz Fraser is on it, for God's sake, from the Cocteau Twins.
Yeah, there's a bunch of guests on it. Richie Havens is on it, and Nina Cherry. It's he spent a lot of time on it. He did it for like a couple of years or something.
Yeah,
and the thing was kind of a dud. The whole expo, like the way fewer people showed up for the thing. It ended up being like now it's the O2 Arena.
Right.
And but anyway, I
what do you give?
I gave it 2 stars as a thing.
Yeah, it sucks as a thing. It's a piece of shit.
I listened to all of it.
Flies buzzing all around.
It's long.
It's
very much like it's a concept thing. It's a concept thing where there's like Earth people and space people, and it's like a Romeo and Juliet thing where like they're like at war, but at the end they like the space people conquer the Earth people.
I was just so bitter that my finger from streaming it was very tired
just from clicking on the song,
and I feel very embittered to him toward that.
Anyway, that's what OVO is, in case you're interested.
Yeah. So 2002, Long Walk Home, music from the Rapid Proof Fence, a more diffuse ambient twist on what he had done with Passion over a decade earlier, but this time without all the overt world music stuff.
You familiar with this one, Kevin?
No.
Yeah, this is another score he did, or it's a soundtrack album, right? So this is from the movie The Rabbit Proof Fence. Anybody know that movie? I don't. No. Okay.
Based on the music, I'm going to remain unfamiliar with it.
Yeah, this is the to me the least successful of the 3 major soundtrack things. It sounds like kind of like Passion with a lot of the more interesting stuff kind of stripped out. So I gave this one 1.5. Didn't have to spend a whole lot of time on this one.
I give it 2.5, but I'm being generous.
It's not super listenable, I don't think, as an album.
Okay, so 2002, Animal Nation from the Wild Thornberries. 2003, Burn You Up, Burn You Down from Hit. 2004, The Book of Love from Shall We Dance,
which he redid again later. It's actually a really good song.
2007, I beg to differ, but I just think it's okay.
You know who it is, right?
No.
It's Magnetic Fields.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 2007, Angelique Kidjo's Salala from Jin Jin, written by Peter Gabriel. 2008, Down to Earth from Wally. That actually is a very good song.
That's another Oscar bait song, and I think it was actually
that
nominated.
One should go on our playlist.
Yeah, that is a good song. You know that one, Kevin?
I do. And did he win the Oscar for that, or he didn't? I remember he was nominated.
I don't think he did.
He did not win. He was nominated, and I think that was the year Slumdog Millionaire won everything. I think a song from
right.
that one. But it was nominated. It's a good song. So that we'll put on our playlist. We recommend that one.
But now we're out of the phase of just trying to get through all that stuff. Now we're at 2002's Up. Kevin, you want to just take our hand and explain to us how we should feel about this?
Wow, that's that's an honor. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
The honor is all yours, my friend.
I would say you've just walked us down a long, amazing road. And then I would just say, from a Peter Gabriel's fan, it was a really dark moment.
Why is this? Because you've at least liked everything he's put out. Why was it dark for you?
It was, I think it was just a guy that after all of that incredible art, I don't know, sort of forgot that he made great records, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it really was, he should have just kind of shelved it. And you can't live off of these years of saying I'm a perfectionist and this is what I do and it takes this long. Sometimes you've just sort of missed the boat, right? Yeah. And that I think is an unfortunate moment. Of course,
are there aspects that you like about it or no?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I'm always trying to copy and steal of him. I Grieve is a great song, right? It's a good song.
That was my favorite one on the record, yeah.
Yeah, that's just, it's got something magical to it. So, right. But I think that whatever the Andy Griffith show, whatever that thing is.
The Barry Williams show.
It's really weird.
What's
you ever seen the video for that?
No,
it's weird.
I'm scared.
It's really weird. It's like a Jerry Springer show.
Oh, that's right. I did see it, which makes it even worse.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. This one, it takes the thing of we're just making tracks in the studio, building a thing one at a time, to a pretty far extreme. It's kind of, I don't really detect any human being playing music. It sounds like all MIDI'd. There's kind of some Reznor kind of stuff. It seems like that's maybe stuff that he's into when he's making this. He just doesn't really have the songs for this, so it's more of a sound design kind of experience. And everything's kind of really long. This one was a rough one for me. I didn't really enjoy. This was not an enjoyable listen for me, I have to say.
What did you give it?
I gave it 1.5.
1.5.
This was the weakest one to me.
Okay. So, by the way, this is his last full-length studio album of new original material to date.
Right.
So next year will be 20 years since he's written an album of songs.
Wow. Dave, where do you go on this?
1 star. I give it 1 star.
1 star.
1 star. He's lucky he gets that. He's so lucky he gets that. I get. In fact, no, I'm sorry. I give it a 0.5 star, not 1 star.
This is a pretty common way that this show ends.
yeah.
I was going to say, I didn't know you could sort of change the ranking in midstream, right?
It turns out I had not read correctly because of the tears that are welling up in my eyes. And by the way,
the hatred, the blood in your ears is making you.
It's a hate sadness. So around this time, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of Genesis in 2010 and a 2014 induction as a solo artist. In 2010, he released Scratch My Back.
So these next couple of things kind of all blended together for me.
Yeah.
Because he did Scratch My Back, which is an album of covers that is with an orchestra. And then he did another one called New Blood, which is all his own songs with kind of the same approach.
But then came and I'll Scratch Yours.
Well, there's that too, which I know. I'm aware of that.
So Kevin, you want to lead the charge on this? Talk to us about this this particular soundscape.
We can kind of lump these two together, I think.
Yeah, I think it's pretty okay for me to miss it.
Yeah. The thing that stood out to me is that the one he does where it's covers, he kind of radically reimagines every song. He changes the chord structures, changes the melodies. But then on his own shit, it's all very faithful to the original structures of the songs.
It's the same bloated drift. On Scratch My Back, the only song that I would even nominate to be on our sacred playlist is I Think It's Going to Rain Today. And the only reason is because it's faithful.
Yeah, well, I would say the same about The Book of Love, which is an excellent Magnetic Field song. He stays pretty true to that. His voice kind of suits it. That one was okay to me. I liked the one of his own tunes better, the New Blood record better. And some of the ones that on that record that were kind of more interesting were kind of the darker ones. Like he does, He does some of the tunes like from
the Rhythm of the
early
Heat is
records.
really
He does.
That's the best song.
He does some stuff from the early records and kind of interpreted with the orchestra. Some of those are kind of cool. I mean, it's you know what it's like. It's kind of like going and seeing him like sing with the LA Phil or something. You know, it's like it's you know.
It's
somewhat entertaining.
I give 1.5 for whatever the fuck it's called. The first one,
Scratch My Back.
Yeah. And then for 2011's New Blood, I'll give it 2 stars.
I gave it exactly the same.
Nice. How about you, Kev?
Almost NA. I just kind of
yeah.
Those are kind of NA.
Perfectly acceptable-ish. Okay, so 2012, we have a song called "Speak Boy" from the Reluctant Fundamentalist OST. I'll give that 2.5 stars. No one here knows what the fuck I'm talking about. Okay, 2016.
I think I stroked out during this part.
2016, he has a single called "I'm Amazing." If that's true, you would never know it from the single. Have either of you guys heard this?
I have not. I know I'm supposed to too.
NA from you, Mr. Whelan. All right, you can remain silent on this. All right, 2.5 stars from me on "I'm Amazing." Also in 2016, he had a single called
I'm good. NA.
Okay, called "The Veil." Even more
And that's the last one, right?
No.
Oh man.
2017.
Oh, that's the last one.
Keep paying those bills, Pete. Every Bird from Birds Like Us soundtrack. I'll give it 2 stars.
That's an Oscar bait one because that is from it's from an animated movie that was made. I think it was made.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, I recall.
Okay.
It's very Oscar baity. It's okay.
Now, as far as the shape of his arc, it's really not. You don't have to be a rocket scientist on this one. There's basically 2 stages. You have his experimental beginnings, and much more interesting, and then his trapped in amber sound world music, where he's this monk-like figure. There's no shape to speak of here. It's just 2 levels. So my top 3 albums would be "So" is number 3, "Car" is number 2, "Melt" is number 1, and the worst album is "Up."
Should I do mine next?
Can you do that again? I'm sorry.
Sure. So number 3.
Number 3 is "So." Mm-hmm. Number 2 is "Car." Number 1 is "Melt." And the worst album is "Up." And by the way, if you don't catch these, don't worry because I'm selling it in pamphlet form.
I think you
distributing
should.
it.
Make a tablet.
Totally.
Yeah, tablet. Stone. Chisel the shit down.
We very often end up with very similar lists, and we have yet again, I think, because I also have "So" at number 3, but I have "Melt" at number 2 and "Car" at number 1. So we had the same top 3. I also thought "Scratch" is pretty close too. Like that one to me is not that far behind.
And what's your worst?
"Up" be my worst.
"Up," okay.
Yeah.
Kevin,
I consider "Up" to be worse than the last couple of ones, the orchestra ones, because really who cares about those? But "Up" is kind of more of a, it hurts that it's not good.
Yeah.
You know.
Wow.
How about you, Kevin?
I'm gonna have to say, let's see. Okay, so I would put "Car" as number 3. Mm-hmm. I would put "So" as number 2. I would put "Melt" as number 1, and the worst is for sure "Up."
Yeah, it sounds like, based on all the criteria that
we have
got
a consensus.
Yeah, there is a consensus.
We have
a consensus.
Yeah. So, it's definitely, there's a lot of riches to be had from his discography, but there's also, if you're a fan, it feels like there's got to be nothing but disappointment.
Some fans were probably disappointed with "So" when it came out. Some of the fans that were more into the more art, the more artsy side of his stuff were probably disappointed with "So." I think this is going to be a really strong playlist because if you really kind of distill it to the best stuff, it's like there's still a lot. There's definitely a lot on there.
Yeah. Kevin, we want to thank you profusely from the bottom of our hearts for stuffing your ear holes with these fine sounds.
Sounds like they were already pretty familiar.
I have to thank you guys. This was mentioned to me weeks ago, and I'm sorry I wasn't as prepared as I hoped.
You were very prepared.
You were very prepared.
You were plenty
but
prepared.
I got to tell you, this has just been one of the most enjoyable things that I've ever done in kind of an interview, and I love your podcast. I've listened to it. with others. So thank you so much for having me and attempting to do this massive piece of work.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks
please,
for the kind words.
by all means, hook us up with your social media. We'll certainly
I most certainly will.
We'll expound like crazy. Definitely follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and subscribe like crazy.
Yeah, this is to all the fans out there who might be listening. You can find us on social media.
That's
We're
correct.
out there like regular, normal ass people.
We are, and we've got some crazy ass motherfucking episodes coming up.
Yeah,
too,
lots of more good guests coming up. Lots more great artists. There's this is the great thing about this show is that you'll never run out. Because,
but if you if all you did was tune into this, boy, are you happy, because now you get to flop over to his long form interview with us, where he bears it all and winds up actually in our arms in tears. You can find that on his interview, on Kevin Whelan's interview on Discography. We'll see you then.
See you next time.